They never announce the test. The invitation arrives on proper paper, the kind that whispers rather than speaks, and the host's name is typed as if it has been typed that way for a century. Your card is a door, and you will step through it into a room where the furniture is old enough to have memories. The house stands with the patient spine of a family ledger. It has learned to outwait fashions. It is not what is laid on the table that matters, but what is weighed there. This is the dinner guest test, and the grading is silent. The first mark is made before you cross the threshold. Punctuality is a currency older than gold. Arrive a little early and you appear eager. Arrive a little late and you declare that the house is a platform for your entrance. Old money keeps Greenwich time in its bones. In Newport, the 400 were not late to Mrs. Caroline Astor's ballroom because the room itself was a chronometer. In London, the bell at Brooks's could be set by the footman's stride. In Paris, the Rothschild dinners began neither early nor late. They began when the room had settled like fine silt in a still river. You do not push the minute hand. You join it. A butler relieves you of your coat, which you surrender without performance. You do not narrate the journey, the traffic, the airplane, the week you have endured. You let the house erase the outside world. There is a small table for cards, a tall arrangement that is not tall enough to interrupt faces, silver as discreet as a smile. The test begins with how you see. Do you notice the family portrait because the painter signed it, or because the hands have been painted with affection? Do you admire the Patek Philippe because it is expensive, or because it has the kind of patina that can only be reached by inheritance? Old money recognizes new money by the brightness of the gaze. New money stares. Old money glances. Names are introduced like heirlooms. You say each one without embossing it with your own history. You do not say, "I was just at Claridge's," unless Claridge's is the setting of the smallest necessary anecdote. You do not say, "You know the Duke of Wherever." Debrett's peerage does not need your confirmation. It is remarkable how quickly a room detects the gravity of humility and the weightlessness of boasting. Ward McAllister learned, while counting Mrs. Astor's famous 400, that a list is a dangerous thing. It can be used to include, and with a softer hand, to exclude. At table, you are composing your own small entry in a private register. You are not auditioning for a column. Seating is a chess problem solved before you arrive. You do not second-guess the board. You converse to your left and to your right without rearranging orbit. The person you speak to is a country in which you have just landed. Ask a real question and then wait. The power of old money is not merely ownership, it is patience. Quaker bankers like the Barclays prized a kind of plain speech that makes gilding unnecessary. The talk that counts most is not loud, nor fast, nor constantly clever. Emily Post learned this when she wrote, in 1922, that conversation is a kind of gift exchange. The grandest gift is attention. Cutlery is not a trap of rules, but an index of temperament. You begin at the edge and move inward, yes, but the point is not to prove that you can distinguish a fish fork. The point is that you are not in a hurry. The soup arrives as quiet as snowfall. You do not salt it before tasting. You do not adjust a chef the way one adjusts a thermostat. You are being assessed for restraint. An ancestor used to say that appetite is a loyal servant but an insolent master. Old money watches the first bite for the secret treaty you make with yourself. Will you govern your pleasures? Or will they govern you? Wine is poured slowly, the color held up to the light, as if it were a rumor. If you know the vintage, you do not perform knowledge. If you do not apologize for ignorance. You taste and you allow. There is a difference between discernment and display. In the villas of the Medici, the best sellers were not catalogues but continuities, layered like fresco. In England, a decanter shaped like a ship's stern is set down with the steadiness of a family myth. A person who asks for ice makes more noise than the tongs. A person who asks for permission to decline makes none at all. The servants are not scenery. The oldest line in the test book is the simplest one. How you treat the invisible reveals the outline of your soul. There is a story told in a dozen houses of a guest who spoke to a footman without looking up. That guest was not asked again. In Vienna, the great houses taught gratitude like scales at a conservatory. In Mayfair, a butler could tell you more about a person's lineage from a single thank you than from a crest. That is not superstition. It is data. Conversation forks the way a river does. You avoid the channels that appear to prove sophistication and lead only to self. Markets, politics, fashion, these are tinderboxes in a room that knows where every match is kept. You attend to the weather of the table, not the weather of the day. When Prince Edward's set at Marlborough House made society a theatre, the most prized actors were those who knew how to leave a silence intact. The silence is where trust takes a breath. You do not weaponize fact. You ask for stories. The difference is that a fact is a door you close, and a story is a door you open. You are given a dish that is unfamiliar. If it has a name in a language you do not speak, you let the host pronounce it. You do not laugh at your uncertainty. Old money is a museum of uncertainties, carried without embarrassment. There is a small piece of fish you do not care for. The plate does not require your speech. You leave a little. You allow the kitchen its dignity. In some houses, there is still silver from Garrard that has been replated so many times it remembers the scrape of centuries. Your knife should not introduce itself loudly. The host proposes a toast. You do not stand higher than the person honored. You raise your glass to the level of your chin and the level of your comprehension. Toasts are not speeches, they are acknowledgements. In Paris, when Baron James de Rothschild lifted a glass he did not raise his profile, he lowered his guard. Old money understands that the room is the subject, not the speaker. One sentence is an orchestra when it has the right pitch. There is a guest who talks to make himself central. The test marks him in pencil because ink would be unkind. Another guest asks the person beside her a question with no visible purpose and listens as if the answer could alter a will. Old money prefers the second. It is not philanthropy. It is engineering. Family systems remain upright because they are built from quiet tolerances and long beams of discipline. The dinner table is the stress test of that architecture. A person who cannot hold a conversation without pushing cannot hold wealth without pressing it into noise. You will pass the bread. You will pass the butter. You will pass the salt with its companion, the pepper, because, like certain cousins, they are never separated. These are not commandments. They are habits of courtesy that survived revolutions. The French had a century that tried to reset the table. The English had a century that pretended nothing had been moved. The Americans tried to build the table bigger in Newport and slimmer on Park Avenue. All three learned that manners are not decor. They are a language that allows strangers to share heat. There is a temptation to audition generosity, to declare charitable boards, to enumerate trusteeships, to list gala chairs. Resist it. The old houses have walls that remember the sound of checks being written in libraries. They do not remember the speeches. In New York, the social register was not a hymn book but a phone book. It existed to reduce the decibels between people who would understand one another without translation. If you want to volunteer a virtue, do it by asking the host if there is a custom you should follow in this house. You will be told kindly that you are doing very well. Storytelling is where you are most legible. A tale told at table is a portrait. If you cast yourself as a hero, the frame is too small. If you cast yourself as a witness, the frame grows large enough to include the listener. The best stories in the good rooms have edges softened by time. The worst are sharpened by victory. Remember that a fortune is almost always the residue of someone's patience. When you speak of money, speak as if it could spoil, because it can. You excuse yourself with the quiet that you brought in. The door is the final question. Do you thank the staff on the way out? even if they are the last human faces you will see that night. Do you leave without swiveling your attention back to yourself, like a lighthouse redirecting the sea? If there is a car waiting, it does not honk. If there is a coat, it does not demand theatrics. You depart as if the house will continue, because it will. The next morning, a note is written on thick card, not merely because stationery is pretty, but because gratitude should occupy space. Smithson of Bond Street has known this for a century. You say one thing you learned, name one dish without analyzing it, and you thank the host for the company rather than for the invitation. You do not angle for the next dinner. That is precisely how you earn it. What then is the dinner guest test measuring? It is not forks, it is not cellar law, it is not the surname stitched discreetly into a cuff. It is composure under velvet pressure. It is how you hold a small privilege, then set it down without fingerprints. It is whether you can be trusted inside the machine that keeps a family intact across bad markets and good centuries. It is whether your presence increases the oxygen in the room or uses it up. Old money has spent generations learning that an empire is fragile in the loud places and durable in the quiet ones. History has taught this lesson with granular patience. The Vanderbilts built mansions in marble, then discovered that marble cannot teach the third-generation restraint. The Astors perfected lists, then learned that lists cannot teach mercy. English dukes sold Rembrandts to pay taxes and noticed that the sales could not buy back discretion once it has left the room. The families that lasted learned that the table is not for display, it is for calibration, a final word that is not a rule. The test is not hostile. The test is hospitable. It wants you to pass, because a passed test adds one more person to the network of stable minds that keep a city, a country, a civilization from fraying. When you succeed at the dinner guest test, you are not merely judged acceptable, you are folded into a fabric that predates you. You become the sort of person who can be trusted with a confidence, with a godchild, with a summer house when the roof is being replaced. You become part of the chain that links patience to grace. And if you fail, there will be no letter, no blacklist, no reprimand. You will simply find the calls thin. The invitations will drift elsewhere. Your name will sit at the edge of somebody's pencil and never find its way into ink. That, too, is history's method. Power does not always slam doors. Sometimes it just keeps them from opening again. So you arrive on time. You leave with a card. Between those 2 points, you practice the oldest art in private life, the shaping of self, until it fits in a chair that was carved before you were born. The silver does not remember your name, but the room might. If it does, it will be because you treated every minute at that table as a chance to demonstrate the quiet wealth that costs nothing and outlasts everything.